All right. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. I'm going to present this work I conducted with my co-authors Viet, Markus and Niels Henze back when I was still in Stuttgart. And here I'm going to present today a work that builds up on previous work we did to now understand unrestricted touch interaction in the wild, and especially focusing on the front screen of the device. And you must probably all have used your smartphone today once or even multiple times. So smartphone interaction is kind of important to understand how we actually use the phone itself. And across the world, more and more people are using smartphones on an everyday basis for tasks like engaging with friends in social media, but also for work environments. So to build interactions which are ergonomic and help the user best, there's a wide variety of studies that actually looked on how we hold devices and how we make use of the front and the back of the device, and how finger placement happen. And I'm going to start off with this early work here from 2014, where the authors here presented this work at CHI, looked at the reachability of the thumb. Here they presented a model to understand how the reachability is affected in this one-handed scenario, both by positioning the hand on the phone, but also by, for instance, the finger length. So while this work was only included the reachability of the thumb in general, there are 4 other fingers around the device. So we looked in a follow-up 2 years later. We looked into what would the other fingers do while the thumb is engaging in the front screen. So here we analyzed in a very static scenario how users would engage in, for instance, writing, reading, and watching video tasks, and how the fingers are placed on the back of the device. So this was our first investigation here, and we saw that the task actually highly influences how the finger are placed on the back and, of course, on the front. So in a more thorough study, we then used a motion tracking system to actually understand what is the ergonomic region, the comfortable area where the fingers can move around the device, both on the front and the back. Here we looked at the comfortable area and then also the maximum reach area, where's the boundaries where the fingers cannot go without actually having a new grip. And in this scenario, we wanted to also know at this for the front of the screen, which is very important. And if we want to look on the front of the screen, we cannot actually deploy a task. So we only ask participants to here discover the area. And also phone has a very drastic influence, the phone size, on actually how the fingers move over the device. So we use this 4 devices here, and I will later compare my new results to the early results with these four phones. So keep them in mind. We used the Samsung 3 Mini, Samsung 4, OnePlus 1, and then Nexus 5. And already giving you the results from the early exploration, where actually the comfortable area is, where the thumb in that case, can reach the screen. As you can see here, for these results here, for the Nexus 6, the yellow phone here, the outline of the phone, the dashed line here, is way larger than the actual reach of the finger. So this was our first results when looking only without a task. And then we did a follow-up on that, because the reachability is most probably also influenced on the scenario in which or the setting in which the user is. So we looked in a walking and sitting task, which was presented just 5 weeks ago at Mobile HCI. And again, we used the motion tracking system and looked at how the fingers are placed. And here we deployed now a task to actually understand what the fingers are doing when not instructed to explore. So because we deployed a task that actually we cannot understand what the thumb is doing on the front, but we can use the data from the back of the device, as there is no restriction, there's free movement on the back. And what we found in comparison to earlier work is that we have the green area here, the comfortable area from the first paper, the grip area from the mobile HCI paper, and then we found this area where we can actually use back-of-device interaction. But this doesn't answer the question, what about the front screen? How can we understand where the fingers, the thumb, is interacting with the front of the screen? So how can we now study finger placement in various scenarios on the front of the device? And one thing what we need to understand here to actually do this, to understand, is that when we have graphical user interface designs like buttons and sliders on the device, we restrict the user in a way that we force the user into interacting with all of those buttons. So to understand where the user wants to place his thumb, for instance, we cannot have buttons and interactive elements on the front. But then we want to make the user interact with the device in the first place. So how could this look like? Like a free interaction without restricting by graphical user interface elements. And you could think about a task as a Google Map task, where you have the pinch and zoom gesture, which can be performed all on the screen. But then building a new app that replaces Google Maps and asks people to actually use this in their daily basis is most probably not going to work, as Google is so good. So we were out and looked for opportunities. What can we build? What kind of app we can build to publish in the market to then collect data from? And the first one here we saw is a clone of Flappy Bird, where we actually implemented Flappy Easter, where here the bunny is flapping through the carrots instead of the bird. And this is the type of interaction where we actually have tap input, unrestricted, as the tap can happen all over the screen. So we could only collect tap gestures, but that was the first we wanted to do here, to understand where would the user actually interact without any restrictions. This would give us a hint on where's the sweet spot of interaction on the front of a device. So, but as I said, tap is not the only thing what we perform on our phone on a daily basis. We also use swipes and gestures and scrollings. So we were on the look for a second game in that case to actually publish in the market, and we found again an app or a game which is played by millions of users, 2048 here, where we actually have swipe gestures up and down and left and right that to interact with the game itself. So again, swipe gestures that can be performed all over the screen without restricting the user to actually press particular buttons, to force them into interacting and going out of the sweet area where the user wants to interact. So we implemented this, and I guess you most probably have heard and played yourself, and there are millions of clones out in the Android market. So we published both of those apps in the market. And after publishing, there comes the nice part in running in the wild studies, is waiting for users to actually produce data. And here, for both of the games, we had roughly 300 devices online, produced 2.1 million Flappy Bird taps and 4.9 million swipe gestures in the 2084. So looking only at the single touch event, we had roughly 45.8 million touch events from 670 devices. And this is after filtering, actually. We had users that only played once or twice, so we removed them, and when there were too little or too few touches, we removed those devices. So this is basically the data set I'm basing the following analysis on. And in the beginning, I already talked about different device sizes and how they come into effect and how they play an effect in how you hold your device and where you interact with your device. So we looked and coded actually the device sizes. The Android is not giving you the device size. We hunt down and hunted for the 607 device screen size to actually run our analysis here. And we have a nice coverage from all the way from a bit over 3-inch device size to almost 11-inch screen size. With obviously the majority is in the 5-inch department, as this is our common understanding of what we like phones to be. So from 5-inch we're going down to 9, where we have only a few devices, and then in the tablet segment, in the 10-inch department, we have again a couple of more devices. So by knowing this nice distribution of screen sizes, we could then code all the touch events into one unit, so into millimeters, to correlate all the different devices to each other. And then we ended up with this heat map you see here on the left, and we actually adapted a data pipeline we had for the motion tracking system for the earlier studies. So we had the first heat map, the input heat map, and then we applied some filterings to actually gain here this outline, which you can see on the right. And we did this for bins of devices, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 8, and 8 to 11. The 5 rows here, 5 columns here. And then we distinguish between the tabs and the swipes here, Flappy Bird, the tabs, and the swipes 2048. And you can already see that filtering worked quite well here on the right side, where we have larger devices, where there's more variation in where users would like to interact with their device or did interact with their device. But then for all, we have like a clear hotspot here outlined then with the blue line, and the centroid giving us where actually the most touch events happens on the front of the device for a wide variety of sets, but also as this was an in-the-wild study, this could have occurred in all of the possible scenarios. So with that, we went back to actually understand how does this relate to our early results from the first motion capture tracking study. And we looked at the same 4 devices, and we actually looked at the trend line on where's the centroid and how the centroid of the hotspot area moves between here, what we call the sweet area and the sweet spot, and the comfortable area from the first paper. So we looked at both centroids and how they influenced each other, and we actually saw that with growing device size, the sweet spot moves from the lower right to the upper left. And this was in line with previous work where we showed the same effect for those 4 device types. And then as we have more data, we have all the way up to 12-inch devices, we actually found the same trend line, both for swipes and tapping for all of the devices. So the hand is moving up on the device, and the sweet spot is moving in relation to the screen size. So how does our findings now relate, and how does the bigger picture of how we use the front screen of our devices look like? So first of all, we have all the front screen, the outside area of the comfortable area. The comfortable area, that was the part we observed in earlier work. And now we found that we actually have a sweet area where the user likes to interact when there's no restriction given by the graphical user interface. And we found that there's actually a sweet spot where the user is highly likely to interact with the device, giving him the most comfortable interaction on the front of the device. So with that, I already come to my conclusion. We run a large-scale in-the-wild data collection study with 2 apps published in the market. We're collecting almost 45 million samples. We identified first the sweet area, which is inside of the comfortable area, and we identified the sweet spot where most of the touch interaction is happening. And future work, what will this enable? This will enable button placements right where we want them, right where we need them. And for instance, you could imagine scenarios where you want to erase a file, and the yes, I want to delete the file button is actually under the finger, but that would most probably trigger accidental deletions of files. So actually placing the button, for instance, outside of the sweet spot, but within the comfortable area, would enable that the user rethinks their choices. That would be an example how we can use that sweet spot and how we can prevent somebody deleting the file in an unwanted case to rethink their choices. And with that, I like to thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Great talk. Yeah. Questions? Yep. So while asking questions, please say your name and affiliation.
Hi.
Thanks.
I'm Alfredo Ferreira from University of Lisbon. Can you put the previous slide where you show your sweet spots? For me, that's clear for a right-handed person. Do you think you can use this to identify if one is right-handed or left-handed automatically?
So that's a good question, and we have basically no demographics information about our user, nor age, nor or gender, or which hand they actually used, or even which finger they actually interacted with the device. And I think this can be good and bad both at the same time. So this is basically from our population, from those 607 devices, this is what basically the mean interaction is. And when not knowing how the user's actually interacting with the device, this is the best scenario. When you know with which hand the user actually interacts with the device, most probably there's a better way. But when you think about designers actually implement new graphical user interfaces where they take this into account, they most probably also don't know what type of user they have.
Yeah, that was my suggestion. If you add another test, controlled one, where you know if user is left-handed or right-handed, maybe you can infer if it's symmetric to this one. And then
that's true.
That will be a great contribution.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. My name is Ardost from Technical University of Munich. Actually, I have two questions. The first one is a follow-up on that. When we don't know about the users, wouldn't that be like, I mean, the majority are right-handed. Wouldn't that be a little bit of discrimination against the left-handed people? Because, for example, me, myself, I have a lot of problem typing with my left hand.
So I think what we see today and in today's interfaces, that most of them are built for right-handed people, even only looking at the mouse, which most of the time is designed for a right-handed person. What we see is that most of the a large number of left-handed people actually adopted and use computing devices just with their right hand to overcome those limitations. So we are in this problem zone where, yes, we will discriminate against left-handed people, and we do this, and they already adapted. So we find ourselves in this problematic scenario where we're not really sure what to actually do, as half of them already adopted the right-handed scenario. So yes, we could be better to include all the left-handed people, and then, yes, as earlier said, also include and make a study which actually looks at how left-handed user with the left hand then would interact.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, generally, I always wished we had some button in the UI that could flip the screen, and then it would be more usable for the left hand. My second question is, don't you think relating this game app, the placement of this rabbit would have influenced on where I'm touching? You see, as a threat to validity. I mean, because I'm going to touch at the place where I can see the rabbit jumping.
Yes, most probably there is an influence by the visual feedback. But I think across all of the different devices, as the rabbit is always in the upper area, where actually was basically outside of the comfortable area, which we replaced there, I think the influence is rather small.
Okay. Any more question? Or we can take also one or two questions. Okay. No. Yeah, I'm also interested in this area because I've been working on this. So, as you said that the collected data you did not analyze in that way, because I am interested to know what kind of posture they're having when they're using that, because that has a lot of differences. And the second point is the finger size. I mean thumb size and also the angle. So yeah.
Of course, I would love to have all those information, but I think that is a trade-off between either having a large data set with millions of touch points, or going back into the lab and inviting 12 participants and looking at 1 million of samples. So yeah, that is the trade-off, and here we went with the idea of now studying what will be all various scenarios people would be in, like trains, planes, whatever. Yeah. So it's a trade-off between the two, either knowing or not knowing, and then having a large data set or a small data set.
Yeah, got it. Thanks. Any other questions? Okay, let's thank the speaker again. Thank you. So